for last Thursday. The Ecstasy. We've got two poems today, but hopefully we're going to do more than just these two poems. I want to try to finish at least Donne today, and if we can get us caught up, that would be wonderful, because sometime over the next 3 class periods after today, 2 or 3 class periods, we've got to do course evaluations, and I'm not sure when we're going to have time. So, The Ecstasy, page 816. Let me begin with a question. What is an ecstasy? No, it is not a date rape drug. So what is the other meaning of ecstasy? Okay, it is kind of a euphoric feeling, but the literal meaning, that is going back to the ancient Greek, is... here, I'll use a fancy way of putting it. Transmigration of the soul. That is, it is an experience of the soul leaving the body while still alive. No, this isn't Shirley MacLaine and astral projection and getting into all that weird new agey stuff. It was a belief that in an ecstatic state, the body remains alive, but kind of in a state of suspended animation while the soul departs. Okay? Usually it's not where the soul departs, and is hitchhiking around the universe per se. It's where the soul kind of leaves the body, but is still relatively near. Okay? Best example today would kind of be so-called near-death experiences or after-death experiences, where somebody's in a hospital operating room, emergency room table, and 6 months later they talk about hovering above and watching the doctors cut them open and all this kind of stuff, seeing the light, hopefully not the darkness and flames, and then coming back. So, the title of Donne's poem is The Ecstasy. And I should throw this out there. We don't know that this is actually what Donne titled the poem. Some of the manuscripts have this title, some of them do not. But we don't have any of the poems by Donne in his own handwriting. So a lot of the poems, titles are given by early editors, early 17th century editors, or by the people who write the manuscripts. Okay? Because again, not all the copies of the poems have the titles. Where, like a pillow on a bed, a pregnant bank swelled up, to rest the violet's reclining head, sat we two, one another's best. Okay? So he creates a situation. 2 people sitting together, where? A pregnant bank swelled up. How can a bank be pregnant? I mean, is it teeming forth with life? Stuff's about to burst forth, like maggots from a body or something. Renaissance authors love that image, by the way, of pregnancy giving forth to maggots. Read Hamlet, if you haven't. Okay? What's he talking about? A riverbank that is kind of looks like it is swollen. Have you never seen a creek side or a riverbank that's kind of humpy? Okay? That's all he's talking about. Leaning against a mound, essentially, on a bank. So, where, like a pillow on a bed, so he begins with that simile, a pregnant bank swelled up to rest the violet's reclining head. So it's not the image of them reclining, there's a riverbank, and there's a mound or a hump in it, and there's a violet, a flower, just kind of leaning gently against it. Sat we two, one another's best. In other words, we two sat like the violet and the bank. One is doing what? Leaning gently against the other. Okay? Our hands were firmly cemented with a fast balm, which thence did spring. our eye beams twisted, and did thread our eyes upon one double string. So, what is this balm that cements their hands? And first of all, what's meant by cement? Stuck together. Yeah. So their hands are stuck together. By what? Love? It's a beautiful reading of it. What's a less beautiful reading of it? Yeah, sweat. What happens if you hold somebody's hand long enough? Your hand starts to get sweaty. Okay? So, it thence did spring. That is, the balm sprung from their hands being together. I don't think holding hands caused the love. I mean, I like Mary's reading, though. Our eye beams twisted. We've already talked about, eyes shooting out beams. And did thread our eyes upon one double string. Notice, let's say this eye. Let's say they're blind each in the right eye. The left eye shoots out a beam of light. Her eye shoots out a beam of light. And what are they doing? They're twisting. They're entwined. Okay? What imagery is that? It's intercourse. Okay? But it's Eyebeam Intercourse is all it is so far. So to engraft our hands, as yet was all our means to make us one. And pictures in our eyes to get was all our propagation, to make it rhyme. Okay? So what does he mean? To engraft our hands, their fingers are knotted together, he says, was what? All our means to make us one. This is all they've done so far. This is the only way they've made themselves one. And his staring into her eyes and her staring into his eyes is all they've done for what? For propagation. How? How does that lead to propagation? Not physical. What's he see when he looks in her eyes? If he looks closely enough, and if he is close enough, he sees his reflection in her eye. Donne loves this image. He uses it repeatedly. This idea that you propagate yourself into another by looking in their eyes, where you see yourself. Okay? What are you doing? You're making a little you, a mini me, so to speak. Okay? And she's done the same. As twixt, so we get another simile. As twixt two equal armies, fate suspends uncertain victory. Think last week's election. Okay? It's a perfect analogy. Because, 7 o'clock at night, it wasn't an uncertain victory, was it? What was all the media saying? Hillary's going to win. Okay? As takes two equal armies, fate suspends uncertain victory. Our souls, which to advance their state were gone out, hung twixt her and me. See? There's the ecstasy. Their souls had each left the bodies. Okay? So the two bodies are left there, one reclining on the other. They're holding hands. They're looking at each other. Okay? And the souls leave to do what? To advance their state. What's he talking about? Okay, they're having the out-of-body experience. What else? What is his soul doing? What is her soul doing? Okay, that's the to advance their state. Diplomacy. It's like the souls are ambassadors for the body. So his soul has gone out of his body to parley with her soul. Okay? But notice, these two armies are equal. Okay? And whilst our souls negotiate there, we, like sepulchral statues, lay. All day, the same our postures were, and we said nothing all the day. Okay? So the souls have gone out, they're having a negotiation, and their bodies are what? They're like stone. Sepulchral, like statues at a cemetery. Okay? All day, the same our postures were, and we said nothing all the day. If any, so he stops the series of similes and begins a condition. If any, so by love refined, that he soul's language understood, and by good love were grown all mind, within convenient distance stood. So notice what's the condition. If somebody who was refined by love. What does it mean to be refined? Polished? What else? What do you do to refine gold? Or what does it mean to refine gold or silver? You purify it. So, if someone purified by love, so purified, what? That he soul's language understood. He understood whatever that language is, the communication between souls. And by good love were grown all mind, that is, and this person became pure intellect. And he stood nearby, though he knew not which soul spake, because both spake the same, might thence a new concoction take, in part far purer than he came. So if a person so refined by love that he understood the language of the souls, and had become all mind, and he stood nearby, what would he experience? He would see these two bodies, he would hear these two souls, and though he knew not which soul spake, because both spake the same, might thence a new concoction take. Look at your gloss for concoction. Be even further refined. What are we talking about? Have you studied 19th century German philosophy? This is Hegelian, even though it's before him, dialectics. What do you have? Thesis, antithesis. What happens when those two meet? Do they cancel out? No. You get from them the synthesis. Okay? So the new concoction, that's the synthesis. Why? Because both spake, both meant the same. So the thesis, I love you. The antithesis, that is the opposite thesis, is not I hate you. It's also I love you. Both spake, both meant the same. The person standing over here, who's all ears, hears this, and he takes away this. Whatever that synthesis is, we're going to find out. He might thence a new concoction take, in part far purer than he came. Okay, so remember, the souls have left the body, they're negotiating for their state. All right, they're arguing what is best for them. Right? Because when you enter a negotiation, do you really care about what the other person wants? I mean, ultimately, no. You want to get as much as you can out of this deal. Okay? So, they both spake, both meant the same. This ecstasy doth unperplex, we said, and tell us what we love. This ecstasy, the two bodies and the souls leaving those bodies and speaking to each other. This transmigration of souls doth unperplex. Okay, now, what does perplex mean? To confuse, to make unclear. So to unperplex is to clarify. Okay? This ecstasy doth unperplex, we said. Notice. I'll say this is the he, so I'm not accused of being sexist. That's the she. Okay? They're each saying this. Got to make that clear. And tell us what we love. So they're each saying this. We see by this what? By this ecstasy, by this leaving of the bodies, because the bodies are frozen statues down there. We see by this, it was not sex. I don't love you, she is saying to him, because of sex. He is saying to her, I don't love you because of sex. In other words, it has nothing to do with the body. Sounds kind of like, let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Okay? We see by this it was not sex. We saw not what did move. Notice the tense change. We see, when? Now. When's the now? When they're in the ecstasy. So that's present tense. We see now in this ecstatic state. We saw. When is that? Not after. Past tense. It's before. Okay, so what's before? When their bodies and souls were united. Before the soul had left the body. We saw not what did move. In other words, let's assume for a moment that he and the she are my wife and I. Okay? That prior to this ecstatic state, when I fell in love with her, I didn't know why. We saw not what did move. He's saying, I don't know what caused me to love you. And she is saying, I don't know.
Everything. Can one?
I don't know what caused me to love you. Siri, I don't know why you're interrupting. Okay? So, but as all several souls contain mixture of things, they know not what, love, these mixed souls doth mix again, and makes both one, each this and that. Now, you could write an entire paper just on these 4 lines. In fact, you could take almost any 4 lines from this poem and write an entire paper on it. Donne packs that much meaning. So, as all several souls contain mixture of things. What is he talking about? How do souls contain mixture of things? What kinds of things?
Bodies, minds.
Personality, bodies, minds? Not really. Go on. Any of you know about what, Aristotle, for example, said things were made of? Or what they said in the Middle Ages? Earth, air, fire, water, the 4 elements. Okay. Corresponding with those 4 elements, and I can never remember these, are the 4 humors. Okay. These are kind of like spirits within the body, not spirits, ghost-like spirits, but spirits tied to matter. So, for example, phlegm, bloodiness, anger, etc. Okay? So there's this idea that goes back to ancient Greece that if our bodies were composed equally, if we had equal elements, for example, of these, we would never die. The problem is, none of us is composed equally. Some of us have too much earth. We're too earthy, tied to the earth. Some of us are, you've heard the phrase, airheads. We're a little too airy. Some of us are too fiery, get angry too quickly, and some of us are too watery. We kind of have a cold, melancholic, personality and such. Okay? But if we could get those all mixed equally, we'd live forever. So, as all several souls contain mixture of things, they know not what. That is, the souls don't know what they're composed of. Love. These mixed souls doth mix again. So, love then takes soul A and soul B and does what? Mixes them all up. Why? What's he doing? Notice I'm personifying love. What is love doing there? It's taking the earth, air, fire, water, so to speak, in soul A, and the earth, air, fire, water in soul B, and mixing them all up again. For what purpose? To get balance. To achieve balance in the force, So, and makes both one, each, this, and that. Makes both one. I think what he means is, it makes this, and this, and both together one. And the two shall become one soul, so to speak. A single violet transplant. What? We're talking about all this great platonic stuff, and he goes back to stupid flowers? Well, there was a stupid flower in line 2. Line 3. A single violet transplant, the strength, the color, and the size, all which before was poor and scant, redoubles still and multiplies. What's he talking about? Plant propagation. Take a violet, take a daylily, cut it, plant it, and what will happen? You have essentially a clone of the original plant. It will grow. What's the language he uses? It will redouble still and multiply. And you can separate that and grow more. He's using that for an image. When love with one another so inanimates two souls. Notice, when love with one another so inanimates. That is, when love takes this soul and comes over here and between, inside, animates, gives life to this soul, and then does the same with this soul over here, that abler soul, the one that comes out of this, why? Because the two become one. See, this is what's going on here. The thesis and the antithesis together make this. A and B together make one. Okay? That abler soul, which thence doth flow, defects of loneliness controls. Why defects of loneliness?
Because if you're one, then why would you really feel?
Okay, think about that for a moment. If you're one, can you be lonely? Three Dog Night song from back in the 60s. One is the loneliest number that you will ever hear. I mean, read any Tennessee Williams. What is every Tennessee Williams play about? Alienation, isolation, being separated from everybody else because there are imaginary walls around you. Read Flannery O'Connor's A Good Man is Hard to Find. Okay? It's this mentality of the mid-20th century that everybody is in a box and it's impossible to break out of that box. Maybe that's why AT&T came up with the ad, reach out and touch someone. Maybe, okay? So, and it's partly right. What's the one? It's this one. But if one is composed of two, how can it ever be lonely? Right? Think about it. What is this merely another image of? Poem we talked about on Thursday, Valediction Forbidding Mourning. He says, our love, like gold to airy thinness beat, endures not a break, but an expansion. Okay? Defects of loneliness controls. But why should one person be lonely? Why, Genesis speaking wise, why does God create Eve? It's not to complete Adam. Okay, it's partly it. It's because Adam is lonely. It is not good that man should be alone. Is he alone? Think about this. Garden of Eden is full of what? Animals. I don't know about you, but that'd be killer cool, right? Polar bears, lions, tigers, bears. Oh my, it'd be wonderful. Only thing he doesn't have is someone like him. Okay? Someone like him. An equal soul. Okay? Equal, notice. Where is, quote unquote, Eve taken from? Not from the head, not from the foot, from the middle. Equal to. Okay? So, that equal soul which thinks the flow defects of loneliness controls. We then, because keep in mind, they're both saying all this. We then, who are this new soul, know of what we are composed and made. I know what I am composed of. You know what you are composed of. Together we know what we're composed of. For the atomies of which we grow are souls, whom no change can invade. What does he mean by change? He's getting on both Greek philosophy and Christian theology. Souls are what? Immortal. Once a soul is created, it's the quintessence of the Timex watch. It will keep on running for all eternity. What does eternity literally mean? Outside time. It goes beyond time. So souls are immortal. For the atomies of which we go are souls, whom no change can invade. But oh, alas, so long, so far, our bodies, why do we forbear? Now, usually in the past when I've taught this course, I've gotten, looks from the female audience, so to speak. And I've asked a couple times, and students have said, that's the man speaking. Because what's the import of that statement? Bodies are lying down here, right? Souls are up here. They're doing all this wonderful platonic thought. Oh, I love you because your soul's so pure and clear and all this. And then they say, yeah, but our bodies are down there. Why don't we do anything with our bodies? Why do we forbear our bodies? Meaning, why do we ignore our bodies? They're ours. C.S. Lewis once famously said, you are your soul. Your body is what your soul lives in. In other words, this isn't me. Okay? Yoda kind of says the same thing in the third Star Wars film, by the way. Celestial beings we are, not this filthy crude stuff. So, he says, our bodies, why do we forbear? They're ours, though they're not we. We are the intelligences, they the sphere. What is he talking about, the intelligences in sphere? Remember that Ptolemaic conception of the universe we've talked about, where the earth is surrounded by 9 concentric spheres? Okay? In the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church takes that ancient Greek idea and Christianizes it. Okay? How do they do that? They say, well, each of these spheres is an angelic power, let's say. Or, let me put it more appropriately. Each of these spheres has an angelic power controlling it. Who's the angelic power controlling the sphere, so to speak, of the earth? Who's the prince of the power of air? Satan. So if you've ever read C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy, this is why Earth is called the silent planet, because Satan is not in communication with these other angelic beings. So each of these planets, each of these spheres has an angelic source. So let's draw it differently. Here's the sphere. Here's the ruling intelligence. Okay? And it moves around. It governs and controls what happens in that sphere. One way to look at this in the Middle Ages also is that Earth's ruling sphere, so to speak, the intelligence, was fortune. Fortune controlled everything that happened here. Fate stands beyond, outside fortune. Fortune doesn't control fate. So, they're ours, though they're not we. We are the intelligences, they are the sphere. So the body is the sphere. The soul is the intelligence. What happens when you have a body without a soul? What do you have? Corpse? Depending on the context, maybe meat, if you're the Donner Party or, something like that. Okay? What happens if you have a soul without a body? A ghost? I don't know. Okay? We owe them thanks. That is, we owe our bodies thanks. Why? Because they thus did us to us at first convey. Right? Those of you who are currently in love, were you in love with the person that you were currently in love with before you met them? Were you just kind of walking around? I hear the voice. No, you weren't. You had to meet the person first. How did you meet them? You saw them. You heard them. You touched them, etc. Okay? They, our bodies, yielded their forces. What is the force of the body? Sense. Sense. Sensory perceptions. To us. The us is the soul. So, notice, the soul can't do anything without a body. Your papers that you're all frantically working on, I know. Even while I speak, you're sitting there and you're writing. Your papers will get what kind of grade if I never see them?
0.
If they're never turned from up here to soul into physical, tangible bodies. Okay? So you got to get it from up here to down here. That's always the hard part, isn't it? Because up here, you're writing like William well, don't use that exactly. I don't want you, please don't write your papers like William Faulkner. Okay? So, they yielded their forces since to us, nor are dross, but alloy. Your gloss tells you alloy. What does he mean? Why are the bodies alloy? Why are they not dross? What is dross?
What's left over after a refining process?
It's what's thrown away. It's the impurity. Okay? So when I used the example of Yoda just a minute ago, it's not a good example. Because what is Yoda saying in that film? When he says, we are not this crude matter, celestial beings we are. Well, he says it with that word, crude. See, Yoda is what is called a dualist, or another phrase, more particular phrase, a Gnostic, or if you want to go all weird and say Gnostic. Okay? What does that mean? It means knowledge, intelligence, mind is all that is important. When you get to the end of that third Star Wars film, the original third, not the later crap that George Lucas vomited up for us, the very end, and we see the three, the new Trinity, so to speak. We have Obi-Wan, we have Anakin, and who else? Yoda, right? And they're kind of shimmering. Why are they shimmering? Because they're only spirit. They're not this. Okay? Why is it important, from a quote-unquote Christian theological point of view, in the Gospels, why is it important that we have the character Thomas? What's his nickname? Doubting Thomas, what does he doubt?
That Jesus is resurrected.
Yeah, he says, all the apostles tell him, Jesus is back. And he goes, until I see him with my eyes, put my finger through his hand and my hand in his side. He doesn't say, I cannot believe. He says, I will not believe. The next week, Jesus shows up. The room's closed. The door is locked. Jesus appears. Taps Thomas on the shoulder. Come on. Do it. Finger through. Come on. Stop tickles. Put your... Okay, and Thomas says what? My Lord and my God. Blessed are you who have seen and believed, but more blessed are those who haven't seen and believed. This passage, by the way, is real important for understanding a good man is hard to find, okay? Because of what the Misfit says about not being there, okay? So how does it relate here? The body in Christian theology is not dross. It is not an impurity to be done away with. No. It's alloy. What is a metal alloy? Is it just steel? No. It's steel and something else. Steel and another metal blended in such a way that they cannot then be separated. Okay, so what's Donne getting at? They are neither dross to us, they are nor dross to us, but alloy. What's the us again? Throughout the poem, what's the us? The soul. Okay? So, soul and body are meant to do what? They're meant to stay together. So what happens at death? Soul leaves the body. Again, traditional Christianity, what will then happen at judgment? Soul and body are rejoined. See, the resurrection isn't just for the quote-unquote good, the saintly. Everybody gets resurrected. Everybody gets resurrected. Soul rejoins the body and continues in some state after that. Okay? So, on man, heaven's influence works not so, but that it first imprints the air. What does he mean, heaven's influence? Heaven's influence doesn't work on humanity through physical bodies, is what he's saying. It does what? Okay, what is heaven's influence first? Today, in the Christian church, is the beginning of the Advent season, in the Catholic and Orthodox branches at least. Okay? What does Advent mean? Coming. Okay? What happened? What had to happen before that? What happened approximately 8.5 months ago? The Annunciation. Gabriel comes, speaks to Mary. That's heaven's influence. Anytime a person has an angelic experience, a vision, let's say, okay? That's heaven's influence. So what is he saying? On man, heaven's influence works not so, but that it first imprints the air. That is, this angelic messenger takes on an appearance of a body. Donne kind of seems to be saying that if Mary said, are you really a vision? Or are you really somebody, from the neighborhood who's pulling a joke on me? That she could have reached out and not touched him. It would have been kind of like, okay, backing off there. So soul into the soul may flow, though it to body first repair. So, like heaven, if it wants to influence man, must take on a body of air, so my soul can flow into your soul. But what must happen first? It must take on a body. Because souls can't take on bodies of air. I can't just will my soul to go out of my body and take on, a body that looks like Hugh Jackman. Doesn't happen. Okay? So what does my soul have to do? If I'm in this ecstatic state, I've got to send it back to the poor body it was born with. And only then can it have an experience with another soul. as our blood labors to beget spirits, those are the humors I was talking about, as like souls as it can. That is, the spirits, the four humors, are the kind of the blood's equivalent of souls. And what Donne is suggesting there is that the body, the physical body, is trying to create a soul. But obviously, it can't. Only God can create a soul. Okay? So it creates kind of false images. If you need a parallel, for those of you who read the Harry Potter novels, think of Nearly Headless Nick. What is he? He's a ghost. Okay? Why is he a ghost? Okay, he did get beheaded, mostly, not quite all the way. But why is he a ghost? Why didn't he go on? What does he call his state? He chose this pale imitation of life. See, these spirits are kind of pale imitations of souls. The body keeps trying to generate, but it just can't quite get around to it, to making the real thing. So, as our blood labors to beget spirits, as like souls as it can, why? Because such fingers, the bodies, need to knit that subtle knot that makes us man. What's that subtle knot? And more than just the body. It's the body and soul. Notice it's a subtle knot. What is something that is subtle? I've never been accused of subtlety. Okay? People generally know where I stand on just about every issue. So what is subtlety? Indirect? Easy to see? Easy to spy? No. So what's the subtle knot? Where in the body does the soul dwell? I mean, can you go up to your best friend and go, there it is. I see it right there. It's right there at the tip of Devon's ear. No, you can't. Nor can you go, oh, it's down there on the little toenail. It's right there in that great big heart. You can't. Why? Because the thing that knits body and soul together is subtle. But notice, it's a knot. And what can happen to every knot? It can be untied. Okay? So must pure lovers' souls descend to affections and to faculties, which sense may reach and apprehend, else a great prince in prison lies. Okay? So, just as the body tries to create more things like it, so must pure lovers' souls, because they want to create more souls, must do what? They've got to descend to the body. Why? Because it's only in the body and its affections and faculties that souls can reach and apprehend. Because if they don't, then what does the soul in a body become? If a soul in a body doesn't reach out and touch someone, else a great prince in prison lies. And that, I think, is kind of the summation of mid-20th century avant-garde, absurd, and existential literature. It's all this image that we are in prison. We are separated. In fact, it even goes back earlier than that. Read Bartleby the Scrivener. Bartleby's in that box. He can't break out of it. All right? To our bodies turn we then. Now, bear in mind, who's speaking all this? They both are. That person who's been refined by love comes and listens. He doesn't hear anything different between the two voices. Both spake, both meant the same. To our bodies turn we then. Why? That so weak men on love revealed may look. And we're back at the poem we read the other day, the canonization. We beg a pattern of your love. Okay? that weak men, what are the weak men? Those who aren't like us, who don't speak and mean the same. Those who do know, or think they know, when they meet each other, why I love you. It's that great body of yours. It's that great personality of yours. It's your beautiful face. It's your X, Y, or Z. Okay? Love's mysteries in souls do grow. Okay, again, a mystery, something that cannot be really known, something that cannot be solved. So love's mysteries in souls do grow, but yet the body is his book. What are books useful for? Reading, learning what's inside. So what do souls need bodies for? To express themselves. Okay? You know, when you ask, what's the theme of a poem, a story, a novel? What you're asking is, what's the soul? What's it about? What's its reason for existence? And if some lover, such as we, have heard this dialogue of one, notice the paradox. A dialogue, that means two voices, but one thing being said. Let him still mark us. That is, let him still pay attention, note, watch, see us. Why? He shall see small change when we're two bodies gone. Small change. In other words, we're still going to speak and mean the same. Okay? Now, this is a great love poem. There's nothing conditional about it. That is, there isn't anything where you kind of go, yeah, but the man. No, not at all. But, oh, that's right, I took Aaron Angels off. Okay. Read Aaron Angels just for fun, and you'll see another beautiful love poem, but it's got a little twist at the end, so that a lot of people don't like it. I still think it's a beautiful love poem. Aaron Angels. Turn to, we're going to go to Donne's religious poetry, the Hymn to God the Father. You got several of his sonnets there. I used to do all of the sonnets, but it takes too much time. Sorry, not a Hymn to God the Father. Good Friday, 1613, Riding Westward, on page 833, and then Hymn to God the Father will be after that. Okay. This one, in I think all of the manuscripts, does actually have this title. It's Good Friday, the year 1613, and notice, riding westward, meaning the back is to what? The sun, the east. What is in the east? Metaphorically speaking. Well, let's assume this is written in London. What's east of London? Maybe not due east, but kind of southeast. Again, you have to think metaphor. Jerusalem. What's happening in Jerusalem on Good Friday? Take time out of the picture. What's Good Friday? Crucifixion. Okay? Let man's soul be a sphere, and then in this, the intelligence that moves. Devotion is. Devotion. Love of God. Okay? And as the other spheres, by being grown subject to foreign motions, lose their own, he's talking about this idea that the motion of this sphere influences this one. The motion of this sphere influences this one. That's why we suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune down here. We're suffering the motions of all 9 of the spheres. That's why if you believe in astrology and you think astrology is real, it's really real. It's really powerful. It's complete nonsense, but okay. So, subject to foreign motions, lose their own, and being by others hurried every day, scarce in a year their natural form obey. What is he getting at? Put that in everyday, your language terms. What's the speaker starting off with? your soul tells you, your body, to do one thing. But as your body comes into contact with other bodies, other spheres, and is subject to foreign motions, that is subject to the motion of those spheres, drawn into their circles, so to speak. I mean, we still use the language today. We talk about a person's sphere of influence. Okay? We're using Ptolemaic thinking when we use that language. In being by others hurried every day, scarce in a year their natural form obey. Their natural form means what they naturally should be doing. So why don't they follow that natural form? Exactly. Why do comets come? Because they get influenced by the motions of the planets and the sun. There's this big kind of theoretical astronomical idea current today that there is a 10th planet to our solar system. No, it's not Pluto, according to modern astronomy. I'm sorry. When I grew up, Pluto's a planet. When I die, Pluto's going to be a planet. God help me. What's this 10th planet? Apparently, it's a huge, dark planet that is way the hell out there. I mean, like 10 times the distance from Pluto to the sun out there. But it has an effect. And this is why astronomers think it exists. Because there are motions in the outer planets that don't make sense. In other words, they're not following their natural form. So there must be another sphere out there influencing them. Pleasure or business, so our souls admit for their first mover. Right? What moves you? What gets you to get up off your butt and do something? Pleasure, fun, or business, something you have to do. Because if you don't get up for one of those two reasons, what do you become? Ultimately, couch potato and dead. Okay? So, pleasure or business, so our souls admit for their first mover and our world. What does that verb world imply? Is this steady, calm, methodical motion? No. It's like being slung somewhere. Okay? Hence is it that I am carried towards the west this day when my soul's form bends toward the east. That is, my body is carried westward. Why? Pleasure or business? Speaker hasn't said. It's one of the two. But my soul's form. What's he mean by form? He's talking Platonism. My soul's ideal. Okay? That is the form upon which all forms are based. The soul upon which all souls are based. Christ. How do I know? Because man is made in the image of God. And the image of God that he's made in is the second person of the Trinity. Okay? Who will become incarnate as Christ. So, the soul wants to go bend towards the east. Why? There I should see a sun, notice the pun, by rising set. A sun, big ball of gas, glowing glass out there right now, by rising set. Rising how? Rising on the cross, but he's also punning on sun how? S-O-N. Okay? And by that setting, endless day beget. How does the setting of the sun beget an endless day? Because wouldn't the setting of the sun beget endless night? Well, yes, it would, if we were talking about the big glowing ball of gas. But we're not. We're talking about the one that begins, whose setting begins the eternal day, where there is no night, where there is no tears, no sorrow, shedding, etc. but that Christ on this cross did rise and fall, sin had eternally benighted all. Benighted, turned everybody into night, or brought everybody into night. Yet dare I almost be glad, I do not see that spectacle of too much weight for me. What does he mean by spectacle?
The crucifixion.
Okay, I mean, literally that's what he means. But what else does he mean? That spectacle of too much weight for me. You know what the spectacles were in ancient Greek drama? Like Oedipus the King? What was a spectacle in that play? Anybody? You know the scene where Jocasta runs into the temple or into the palace at the end of the play when Oedipus outs himself? What does she do when she runs inside? She takes off her sash, hangs herself. What does Oedipus do when he runs inside and sees her? He pulls the breeches off her gown, takes the pin out, gouges his eyes out, and then he comes back on the stage. So what's just happened off stage? Bloody stuff, murderous stuff, horrible stuff. That's what's meant by spectacle. And the reason he says, a spectacle, glad I do not see that spectacle of too much weight for me. See, it wasn't until about Shakespeare's time that we start to see spectacles on stage. Even the ancient Romans, if I remember correctly, did not have killings and murders and such on stage. Shakespeare, more the merrier. You know, look at Hamlet. The bodies are piled all over. Titus Andronicus, same thing. So, a spectacle of too much weight. What does he mean by weight? Exactly, too heavy for me to endure. For those of you who remember, I know Bill does, 9/11, watching 9/11 happen on TV, much less being a New Yorker and watching the Twin Towers. I saw the Twin Towers before they fell. You know, just amazing feats of architecture. And to see them gone or to see them fall, that is a spectacle of too much weight. Okay? Who sees God's face that is self-life must die? Why? Because the Bible says you cannot see God and live. Moses says, show me your face. God says, hide in that rock, and when you go by, you can see my backside. You know, okay, that's close enough. Who sees God's face that is self-life must die. What a death were it then to see God die. And again, we're at paradox. How does God die? Source of life, dead. Go figure. Mystery. It made his own lieutenant, nature. What's the it? God's death. Made his own lieutenant, nature, shrink. It made his footstool, the earth, crack. And the sun wink. Why did the sun wink? I mean, is he talking about a literal wink? How long does a wink last? 50th of a second? No, the sun winked for how long? 3 hours. The earth went dark. Could I behold those hands which span the poles? Notice, span the poles. He's talking about the crossbeam on the cross, but what else is he talking about? Think of William Blake's wonderful illustration of God measuring out the earth. Span the poles of what are called the antipodes. North Pole, South Pole. Okay? Could I behold those hands which span the poles and tune all spheres at once? The idea, I think I mentioned before, that the 9 spheres, when they're moving, create a music. And if we had ears to hear that music, or if our ears suddenly became clear and we heard that music, we would immediately die. You would be, quote unquote, raptured, because the beauty is so great. It would kill you. Okay? Could I behold those hands which span the poles and tune all spheres at once, pierced with those holes? Could I behold the endless height, which is zenith to us and to our antipodes, humbled below us, that is Christ, humbled, brought down to the ground? Or that blood, which is the seat of all our souls? Some of the manuscripts, because I copied them, read state of all our souls. Like our souls are meant to attain that state. Who is Christ? Son of God. What does Peter say in 2 Peter? Know you not that you shall be partakers of God? We shall be adopted heirs. We shall become by grace what God is by nature. Okay, just, not enough tape in the world. The seed of all our souls, if not of his, that is God's, made dirt of dust, or that flesh which was worn by God for his apparel, ragged and torn. That flesh, the body, ragged and torn, the scourging and crucifixion. If on these things I durst not look, because bear in mind, where's he going? He's heading west. Visually, his eyes are pointed away from Christ, away from the crucifixion. If on these things I durst not look, durst I upon his miserable mother cast mine eye. This is one of the lines that makes me think, okay, yeah, Donne became Anglican, but he did not become a full-bore Protestant. Because Protestants usually don't give a rat's, for Mary. He still does. In fact, he has a couple of poems written about Mary. Upon his miserable mother cast mine eye, who was God's partner here. Why? Why was she God's partner? Okay. Why else? Be it unto me as you have said. That's what Mary says. What, theoretically, let's say, what could Mary have said? No, forget it. Not going to do it. Go pick somebody else, And furnished thus. And this is what I think is the really kind of almost Catholic idea. Furnished thus half of that sacrifice which ransomed us. What's the half that Mary contributed? To flesh. Half of the sacrifice was this stuff. Okay? Notice the resurrection is what? There is a spiritual component to it. It's this. That's why Jesus says, come on, Thomas, feel it. When the disciples see him, when they're out fishing and he's sitting there and he's cooking fish and stuff, and he's eating the fish, when the disciples see him eating the fish, he's not like Captain Barbarossa in Pirates of the Caribbean. The one scene where he's drinking wine and stuff, and the moon shines and you see his rotted guts, and the wine just flows through. Jesus isn't spirit. He sits there, he eats, they touch him, they feel him. Okay? That's the half of that sacrifice. Though these things, as I ride, be from mine eye, that is, I don't see them with my physical eye, they are present yet unto my memory. They're always up here, especially on this day. For that looks towards them, and thou looks towards thee. I'm riding away from you. I'm not looking toward you, but my memory is focused on you, Jesus, and you're looking at me. Okay? So, metaphorically, Jesus is hanging there on the cross, and what does he see? Him on horseback, riding away. So what part of him does he see? Right? You know what the most common blessing there is in the Old Testament? May the Lord make his face to shine upon you. It's when the Lord turns his back, you don't want that happening. You don't want to be praying and, no, my back is turned towards you, because that pretty much means life's going to fall apart. And thou lookest towards me, O Savior, as thou hangest upon the tree. I turn my back to thee. But here's why. But to receive corrections, till thy mercies bid thee leave. Not till thy mercies bid thee leave. Would you go out of the room, please, so I can be all alone? It's till thy mercies, your mercy, bids you to stop correcting me. In other words, when I'm done being corrected. Think me worth thine anger. Punish me. Burn off my rusts and my deformity. What is the speaker asking in all these phrases? Purify me. Make me clean. Okay? Restore thine image. So much. How? By thy grace. In other words, you can do it all of your own. That thou mayst know me, and I'll turn my face. It's almost like the speaker is saying, and when you call out, child, son, then I'll turn my face. Notice the poem doesn't end on this wonderful, euphoric, spiritual, I'm forgiven. It kind of ends, the speaker is still faced away from God. In other words, the speaker doesn't experience or feel within himself that grace has been granted. Okay. Hymn to God. Go from there to Hymn to God the Father. Hey, we can get maybe one ahead, maybe two. Hymn to God the Father. Short poem, written in Donne's illness of 1623 or 22. He thought he was dying. Okay? He wrote a series of essays and such called Devotions Upon Emergent Occasions, which is Meditation 17 that we're going to read, is one of those. But he thought he was dying, so he writes this poem. He later, after he doesn't die, has it set to music. And he had the St. Paul's Cathedral Choir regularly sing this. Wilt thou forgive that sin where I begun, which is my sin, though it were done before? What is that sin? Though it were done before. In the West, it's called original sin. In the East, it's called the ancestral sin. Okay? St. Augustine taught that this sin, the sin of Adam and Eve, is biologically passed on through sex. St. Augustine didn't know anything about genetics. Right? But he suggested that the mere act of sex is sinful, even though you're supposed to get married and have children and such. Okay? Which is my sin, though it were done before. So, it's original sin, but it's my sin too. Wilt thou forgive those sins through which I run, and do them still, though still I do deplore? Do them still, that is always constantly, though still, always constantly, I deplore them. This is like Paul saying to God, take this thing away from me. And I prayed 3 times that God would take it away, but he wouldn't. Okay? That thing is often read as a particular sin that Paul was enslaved into. And he couldn't break the habit. That's why he says, the thing I want to do, that I don't do. The thing I don't want to do, that's the thing I do. Wilt thou forgive that sin which I have won others to sin? See, now it gets really worse. Now it's not just original sin. Now it's my enticing other people to sin. And made my sin their door. Like Shakespeare's speaker in the sonnets, introducing golden-haired youth to dark lady. And then golden-haired youth and dark lady shack up, and the speaker's like, damn it. She was mine. You're not supposed to be sleeping with her. And his mind was mine. You're not supposed to be becoming good friends. Wilt thou forgive that sin which I did shun a year or two, but wallowed in a score? What's a score? 20 years. What is to wallow? Fully immersed. Yeah, pitiful, crying. What animals wallow? Horses don't wallow. Pigs do. What do they wallow in? The mire. So get the imagery? Usually when you're talking about wallowing in sin, historically speaking, there is a sexual connotation. He's talking about sexual sin of some sort. Okay? Notice, hey, God, I was good for a year or two, but I just rolled around in it like a pig for 20 years or more. When thou hast done, thou hast not done, for I have more. Notice the pun. When thou hast done, when you've forgiven me, you don't have me done. D-O-N-N-E. When you've done all this, God, you still don't have done. Why? I've got more. That is, I've got more sins. And some people want to read I have more as done also punning on his wife's maiden name. That this is done 6 years after his wife's death, praying to God for his having enticed her into sin. Keep in mind, how old was she when they met? Probably 14. And how old were they when she married? Was she when they married? 17. And then she dies at 33. I have a sin of fear. When I have spun my last thread, I shall perish on the shore. What's the shore? Shore of what? The Atlantic? No. What's the image of? The image is of the Israelites fleeing Egypt, the Exodus. Where does Moses die? Where does Moses, let me put it this way, not go? He doesn't enter the promised land. He goes up to Mount Gilead. He can look over into it, but he doesn't get a go. Joshua and the others all go, but not Moses. The shore, the river Jordan, on the outside, not on the inside. But swear by thyself that at my death thy son, notice the pun again, shall shine as he shines now, and heretofore. Swear that when I die, your son shall shine to me then, when I'm dead, as he shines now. In other words, don't let the sun go out on me, to quote that great theologian, Elton John, thank you. Okay? Shall shine as he shines now and heretofore, and having done that, that is, if you do that, what's the that? If you swear by yourself, God, then thou hast done, for I have no more. What's the I have no more? Or your gloss, some of the manuscripts read, I fear no more. Well, yeah, if he's dead, what can he not do? He can't sin anymore. Okay? We don't have time to do all of Meditation 17, but let's start it at least. Famous 20th century novelist wrote a novel based upon this poem. What's the title of that novel, or based upon this essay? For Whom the Bell Tolls. Or isn't it For Whom the Bells Toll? Can't remember. So, he writes these devotions, and the devotions have a Latin phrase, an English translation of that, then a prayer, the prayer is really long, and then an expostulation. Okay? What you're just given here is essentially the expostulation, and the little Latin part. Nunc lento sonitu dicunt morieris. Now this bell tolling softly for another says to me, thou must die. What's he talking about, the bell tolling softly for another? How many of you are very familiar with English burial customs? Nobody? Really? You guys just really need to broaden your horizons. So, English custom, going back to the Middle Ages, was that when somebody would die, the parish church bell would ring, or would be tolled. Okay? For a man, it would toll 9 times. For a woman, it would toll 8. Not because she was inferior, but to show the difference. A woman died, a man died. Okay? So they would toll, let's say a man dies, 9 times. And it's not bing, 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 bing. It's 9 kind of slow, sonorous tolls. Okay? Then there would be a break, and the bell would toll for the number of years the person lived. So if you're living in a relatively small town, which most were in the Middle Ages and Renaissance, and you hear the number of tolls first, oh, a man died, and you have an awareness of what the situation is in your town, you know who is sick, and who isn't. And then you hear 23, it's John Smith down the road, just kicked the bucket. Or you hear 8 and the number, you know what woman died. So that's kind of the custom. Perchance he for whom this bell tolls may be so ill as that he knows not it tolls for him. And perchance I may think myself so much better than I am, as that they who are about me and see my state may have caused it to toll for me, and I know not that. Notice what he said just in that first sentence. The bell may be tolling for somebody else who isn't aware how near death he is. That is, they started the tolling of the bell before he said, well, I'm not dead yet. Or maybe the people that are sitting around my bed ordered the bell to be tolled for me, and I'm the one who's not aware of how close I am. The church is Catholic, universal. That is, the church is universal. That's what Catholic means. So are all her actions. All that she does belongs to all. When she baptizes a child, that action concerns me. For that child is thereby connected to that body, which is my head too, and engrafted into that body, whereof I am a member. And when she buries a man, that action concerns me. All mankind is of one author and is one volume. Notice the image. All mankind, one book. Okay? When one man dies, one chapter is not torn out of the book. Just love this image. But translated into a better language. And every chapter must be so translated. Notice, Donne doesn't take the Calvin tulip view, and only a very few numbers of those chapters will be translated, and all the others will be cast and burned in the Walker Library because it's the library of hell or something. No, all chapters must be translated. God employs several translators. Some pieces are translated by age, some by sickness. We heard this in The Wanderer, right? And Beowulf. Some by war, some by justice. But God's hand is in every translation. And his hand shall bind up all our scattered leaves again. For that library, now he's changed the image. It's not where all humanity is one book. Now all humanity is one library. Where every book shall lie open to one another. Think of that image. Every book shall lie open to one another. What does he mean?
Wasn't there this idea at that time that some people actually believed that multiverse theory?
Say that again?
Like, wasn't like the multiverse theory, some people believed in that at that time? Remember that?
Not sure.
Because, if so, I guess that makes sense for like the people on this one universe kind of like one book, and the library of the different universes.
Yeah, he's not talking about that necessarily. Any of you read The Minister's Black Veil? Nathaniel Hawthorne? What does he say? What does Parson Hooper say at the end of the short story? The old minister from Westbury comes up and says, "Old man, take off that veil. Let me lift it and lift the veil that separates you from eternity." And Parson Hooper sits up, dying breath, pulls the veil back down and says, "I look upon every face and I see a black veil." What does he mean? You guys think this stupid little piece of white veil, is covering something. It's not. It's white. Why is it everybody so freaks out about that? What is art supposed to do, according to Aristotle in the Poetics? Okay, that's Horace, Teach and Delight. It's imitative. It imitates life. So what's the veil do? Hello. Mirror. You see a black veil. Do you see the black veil? Do you see yourself? Do you see what you're hiding? Okay. We are to be open books. And yet, what do we tend to do? Shove it in that backpack, we don't want to be open butts. We'd much rather, wear the mask. Okay? We'll stop there. We'll pick up with the rest of Meditation 17 on whatever day, Thursday. So if you haven't talked to me about your papers or emailed me a topic,